A 21-year-old woman and her daughter leave a department store with all the supplies they need to celebrate the little girl's second birthday party happening the next day. And there, in the parking lot, they're abducted by a man in broad daylight with witnesses just feet away. The hunt for Linda and Lori Mae lasts for almost 2 weeks as investigators scour the country looking for them and their abductor, a prison escapee. This is their story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring. This week, we will be joined by guest reader Liz Moore.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
We have a bit of a longer episode today, so I'm just going to jump in with a content warning. The first thing I'd like to do is to give that because obviously we talk about missing and unidentified women. That often includes acts of violence, but this episode specifically includes acts of violence against a young child.
Oh, Lord, Amy. What are we getting ourselves into today?
Well, today we're talking about the disappearance of Linda Peogeot and her 2-year-old daughter, Lori Mae, who went missing from Maryland in 1969. So Lori Mae is the child who will be discussed here. Today's episode structure is also a little bit different, so I just want to set the stage for it. I'm dividing it into 4 parts. So first we're going to learn about Linda and Lori Mae. Then we're going to learn about their abductor. And after we're going to get into what happens when the two of them, their paths intersect. And then finally, we're going to end up talking about what we found out about their abduction.
Okay, it's 4 parts.
If our listeners specifically want to know more about their abductor, I recommend reading Born to Lose by James G. Hollick. That covers not just what happened to Linda and Lori Mae, but follows their abductor's story much more closely and specifically details about him and what happens to him.
You read it?
I did.
What did you think?
I mean, I think it provides a really good foundation for what we're talking about here. It is really centered on him as a perpetrator, which we don't necessarily do. So it's a different perspective.
Okay. So anyone looking for that perspective can get that book.
So part 1 is about Linda and Lori Mae. And I really want to introduce Linda first so that we kind of center her story here. Her parents were Harold Stewart and Edna Dayton, who operated a hardware store in Westernport, Maryland, just over the West Virginia line. Though Edna had a son from a previous marriage, Linda, who was born on March 28, 1948, was their only child together. When Linda was 5 years old, her parents divorced, and her mother remarried, this time to William Thompson, who was a railroad foreman, who moved them to a rather nice neighborhood called Bel Air, which was a newer development of ranches and split-level homes. But her father lived nearby and stayed active in her life.
Is it the same Bel Air from The Fresh Prince?
It is not. I actually also had to look it up because there's like an actual Bel Air, Maryland. It's not that either. It's just like a neighborhood. Yeah, it's like a specific neighborhood. This like kind of nicer, newer development.
Okay.
Linda was really a typical teenager in many senses, but also an overachieving teenager. She hung out with friends, she babysat, she basically read all the time. She was in the National Honor Society, sang in chorus, worked on the school yearbook, performed in school plays. She was a cheerleader. She was voted most likely to succeed. Really, she was really making the most out of all of her high school time. She was even the class valedictorian, an honor that she worked for specifically because her father had promised her a car if she managed to achieve that goal.
I could see my kid doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I feel like we both know kids like this quite well.
Yes.
Yes.
They're going to do all the things.
They're going to do all the things and they're going to be achieving everything. But I think it's really, really cute that her dad offered her the car. To do even better. Like, it sounds like such a great family.
Yeah, I mean, she even, like, told her dad no. Like, she was like, you don't have to buy me a car. But, like, then he did anyway, like, once she did.
That's such horrible.
He bought her a small 2-seater NGB. Like, apparently she really loved it. She was, like, constantly out there, like, washing it and taking care of it and kind of showing it off. So it was, like, kind of her pride and joy, this car. It's also possible, like, we know kids like this, or have been kids like this, and she could seem too perfect, right? And kind of
Mm-hmm.
like maybe an annoying sort of way. But one of her friends said, like, that wasn't the case at all, that once you met her, you liked her.
She sounds likable. She sounds like somebody that, like, she seems well-rounded.
Right. So not just active, like socially, but academically, like civically, all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
She was set to attend Potomac College, or what is now known as West Virginia University, Potomac State College, in the fall of 1966. But that summer after graduation and before college started, she was mostly working part-time and spending time with her friends. In July, she and a friend went on a weekend trip to Deep Creek Lake State Park. It was there she met Gerald Peogeot. Gerald was living in Beaver, Pennsylvania at the time and working at Babcock and Wilcox Steel in Beaver Falls. He just joined the Navy Reserves, and apparently Gerald and Linda were immediately smitten with one another. They spent that weekend sharing dinner and canoeing around Deep Creek Lake. Really just like it was an immediate connection.
So how old is she here? She like 17 or 18?
Yeah, so she had just graduated high school. By the time Linda started college in the fall, she was already deep into it with Gerald. And when he asked her to marry him, she happily left college to do so. And she moved to Beaver, Pennsylvania, where she started work in an office, and he continued to work at the steel mill.
I wonder how her parents felt about that.
Well, her mom, Edna, was really worried about the college situation, particularly because at the start of 1967, Linda got pregnant and she had her daughter, Lori Mae, on September 23rd. And so Edna was worried that her daughter had just kind of given up on this like college career. But Linda promised her that she would go back to college after her daughter got old enough.
Okay. It's so hard because you know how like life is after you have kids. So her mom was probably right. She might not have gone back to it. Like it's a worry for a parent.
Yeah, well, her parents did have some concerns, but also they were really happy with the relationship. They really liked Gerald. They had this granddaughter now. So I think like things were really going good in a different direction for her.
Yeah, she was forming this really nice little family, sounds like.
By early 1969, though, Gerald, who was now in active service for the Navy, was stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, which would have taken Linda and Lori Mae away from her family. And he moved down there in April of 1969, and Linda and Lori Mae came down the next month. Part of this process is that they got rid of Gerald's car that wasn't the most reliable, and that also meant that Linda had to sell her like very much beloved and sporty MGB since it was only a two-seater. And together they bought a brand new 1969 GTO in Jacksonville.
I do not know what any of these cars are. Do you? I know
do.
you're more into cars than I am.
I do. So I am about to like go off on how like awesome their GTO was, which my dad would have like been rolling his eyes at if he was still alive because he was very much a Ford Mustang kind of guy.
Okay, so what would he have liked? The sporty MGB or this new GTO?
He would have liked the GTO much more.
He would have? Okay.
Yeah.
So you would both say that this is actually like an upgrade for her, even though she likes this car because her dad gave it to her.
I mean, the MGB is cute.
Okay.
But like it cannot compare to the GTO in terms of like performance, right? And like, some car guy is going to car guy me and tell me all about my thoughts on the GTO. But this car, it's still gorgeous. Like I was looking at pictures of ones that are for sale now because I had some car envy. And yeah, like I posted it online so that other people were liking this. But the GTO is largely credited with being one of the major cars that kind of ushers in like the American muscle car era. Like in 1969, like they had switched the body styles. So, actually I think the year before, so they got curvier and like sportier looking. But like even though the sales of the Roadrunner and Chevelle, like they greatly surpassed the GTO at this point, like they still sold like 72,000 like units or vehicles in 1969. So like this car really stood out.
So all the car dudes will hopefully just respect that you like this car.
I do like this car. I mean, the car dudes would not respect the fact that I own a Mustang Mach-E, but they will probably respect the GTO love.
Okay.
The point of this all, though, is that this car is really distinctive, and it's also really fast. And Linda and George purchased theirs in one of my favorite color combinations of this era, that like kind of like avocado green
Mm-hmm.
with the, it had a white roof. It was just like this really standout, like gorgeous car.
I think we need to bring avocado green back.
Yes, more,
Like
more
in
avocado
everything,
green.
like appliances, bathtubs, cars.
Yeah, like my childhood bathtub was avocado green.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
I want an avocado green fridge.
I want the avocado green car.
I can't say anything because we drive an orange Mitsubishi with a camel bite in it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know,
Well, like, I knew when
that's
Jason
fine.
pulled up to book club the other night. I was like, there's Jason.
Yeah. I like that car. I like a lot.
Linda and Lori Mae don't actually stay in Florida very long. The cost of living is a lot higher there, and like with a young couple who's just had a baby, they're just starting out. This like wasn't something that they could afford. Also, on top of that, Gerald was going to be out to sea for 2 months, so it really didn't make sense for the two of them to stay in Florida without any support system. They agreed that Linda and Lori Mae would go home and stay with her mom and Harold in Maryland. So Linda took the GTO and moved herself and Lori Mae back up north around mid-August of 1969.
It's sad because I feel like I'm really getting like attached to this family too.
Aren't they adorable? Yeah. Linda wasn't really one to rest, and she really wanted to contribute, so she immediately got a part-time job as a waitress at a German restaurant called Warner's Deutsch Restaurant in Cresaptown, Maryland. And this really seems like a place that was like a social outlet for her as well, and she often stopped by on her days off to chat with coworkers and customers. She was really well liked there. On September 21st, 1969, Linda worked an evening shift. She had the next day off and was looking forward to it because she had some errands to run to get ready for Lori Mae's second birthday on the 23rd.
Is she gonna disappear near her birthday? I don't like this story. Tell your crappy story.
The next morning, on September 22nd, Linda's mom gets up early with Lori Mae so that Linda could get some rest after her evening shift. When Linda finally got up, she needed to get started on her errands. She asked her mom if she wanted to go with her and Lori Mae to Cumberland, but her mom said that she needed to stay home and get her stove cleaned. So around mid-morning, Linda and Lori Mae left and went to the bank at Cresaptown to cash a check. Then she went to King's department store in LaVale.
I have the feeling that mom should not have stayed home to clean her stove.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of those moments where you start to see like how small moments can change everything,
Like,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but again, like her mom is just like doing her everyday.
Well, it's
Like,
things you
yeah.
don't think about, but I just feel like just knowing what's going to come up in the story at some point,
Yeah, you start
that
to
it's
be
like, oh God,
God.
was that an actually like, was that a horrible mistake?
Right. So Linda went to the department store looking for gifts for her daughter. While there, she ran into a man named Jim that she had gone to high school with. He'd been away to Vietnam, so they hadn't seen each other since high school, so they start chatting. And then she talks to an employee of the store a little bit before choosing a wagon as a gift for her daughter. She also bought like other party supplies and left the store with her purchases. And those were the last moments before everything went wrong for her. So part 2, this is about the man. The man's story is like so many other stories that people have heard about those who have harmed others, but I'm sharing some of it here because I think there is a lot of ample time and ways for this to stop before Linda and Lori Mae encounter him.
Well, like to be clear though, like this man's not Jim, right?
No.
Okay.
Oh, you were suspecting Jim. Jim's fine.
Okay, Jim's fine. So it's not Jim.
It's not Jim.
It's another guy that they come into contact with later.
Yes, they're going to encounter him in the parking lot.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go back in time so that we're going back to April of this year of 1969 and kind of trace his steps a little up to the point he encounters Linda and Lori Mae.
Okay.
This man was from around the Pittsburgh area and had a history of getting in fights and stealing cars. At the end of March of 1969, the man begins a crime spree. But why specifically at this moment, I'm not sure. He and a friend break into a pregnant woman's house in West Deer Township, Pennsylvania. Her name is Nancy, and they hit her, tie her up, and steal her things, which include her car, which was a yellow Mercury station wagon, along with things like her TV, wedding rings, radios, even her and her husband's clothing, even her future baby's clothing they steal.
I just don't understand the point of crimes like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of senseless stuff that's about to happen here. Thankfully, once they left, she was able to call the police relatively quickly. She said that she wasn't able to see what they looked like because they were wearing masks, but she was able to tell they were driving a red Chevy convertible. Now, James Hollick, whose book I'm using here as reference, calls this next woman Kathy that I'm about to talk about. This is an alias, and I'm just going to keep his alias for her. Kathy is 17 years old, and on April 4th, just a week after the robbery in West Deer Township, Kathy's friend calls her and asks her to come visit her while she's babysitting. So Kathy says she'll try, and not long after, she walks to Sharon's. You're like cringing over there.
I'm cringing. You know what?
Yeah.
I think this is like leading to like these wrinkles right here. When I make this face.
Okay.
Okay.
You're going to have a lot to say about this incident here, so just prepare yourself.
Mm-mm.
On her way to Sharon's, she encounters the man. He and a friend pull up beside her and ask for directions. After giving them, they abduct her. If our listeners want to hear more about Kathy's story, I encourage you again to pick up Hollick's book. But the short version is that she is abducted from north of Pittsburgh and taken across state lines into Ohio. Along the way, she is sexually assaulted, and they threaten to kill her. Kathy doesn't think she's going to survive this encounter, but bizarrely, they decide to drive her back home.
That is weird.
That is very weird.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I'm very thankful that that Kathy was returned.
Right.
Once she gets home, though, she finds her whole household asleep.
She doesn't wake them up?
No.
So she was just picked up, driven around for how long? Assaulted.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Threatened.
Mm-hmm.
Out of state, back into state, and they're all sleeping?
Right. So her parents have assumed that she is at her friend's house.
Okay.
And that the reason why her friend hasn't said anything is because her friend thought that she had decided not to come because she'd been kind of a little bit like wishy-washy about it. So they just each assumed that she was with the other group.
Exactly why assumptions aren't good.
Right. I mean, we've seen this before.
Communication.
Yeah.
It's key.
So when she gets home, she goes upstairs to her room and she doesn't say anything because she's terrified she and her family will be killed. But the next day, she actually has a breakdown and, when she's pushed about it, she tells her family that she's been raped. She's able to tell investigators when she's brought to speak to them that the man drove a red Chevy Corvette convertible.
What a horrible, thing to hear coming from your teenager.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when you think she's at her friend's house, right?
Exactly.
My gosh.
When police are able to locate this vehicle, the man is driving. Kathy is able to identify him as her abductor. Despite this, the police knew this man. They'd been arresting him for years, but he'd never been accused of rape or abduction before. So during this questioning, they actually spent a good part of the interrogation joking around with him.
Really?
They do. And his side of the story is that what Kathy told them is all wrong, and he depicts her as this quote-unquote wild teenage girl. And then he says and this is his words, doesn't need to rape a girl because he's married man with a mistress and also several girlfriends.
So he just admitted to being pretty much gross.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't need to rape a girl that he raped.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't tell me they believe him. They do?
Well, yeah, so it's actually Nancy who comes to save the day. Again, Nancy's the woman who was pregnant who had been tied up and her household goods stolen.
Right.
They identify some of those stolen goods in his possession, and she's able to confirm that they belong to her. And so eventually the man does go to trial. By then, though, Kathy's family has really distanced themselves from her.
From Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they do that?
There's this story that he spun about her going along with him. And I think in some ways they bought into that. And so it went from them feeling like she'd been attacked to them being unsure about what happened to her. This is completely devastating, of course, for Kathy. And I just, learning about what happened to her just like, oh, like completely gutted me.
I think it's devastating for all women. Her own parents should be the ones believing her above somebody who's been in and out of like all these other arrests.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. Like, let's start believing women and our kids, like anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, Kathy is able to take the stand anyway, despite her lack of family support, despite any support. And after the case is turned over to the grand jury, Detective Sergeant Bill Jennings, and I'm saying his name specifically here to call out what happens, he turns to her and says, "Congratulations, Kathy. You put on a good show up there. You're quite the little actress."
So we don't like Detective Sergeant Bill Jennings.
No, because what he's saying is that her being upset, her tears were just all fake in a show.
So, not a good person.
No. Finally, when the man goes to his criminal trial, he is found guilty of rape in the first degree, and he is sent to jail to await sentencing.
Good.
Unfortunately, though, the jail he was sent to was overcrowded, meaning that some of the prisoners were slated to be sent to the Allegheny County Workhouse. The man wants to go there. The jail that he is in has a lot more security, and the Allegheny County Workhouse doesn't. So he's able to chat up the warden and convince him that he's been wronged by a quote-unquote wild teen girl. So he is selected and sent to the workhouse instead. And this is while he's awaiting his sentencing for like how long he's going to get for rape.
The wild teen girl thing is still like just completely grossing me out. Because first off, I don't really think that like exists on that level. And like if it did, adult men shouldn't be the ones.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, there's just so many layers of misogyny and terribleness happening in this story. So because he's been successful in securing his position, though, at this workhouse, he and another man are able to escape on September 11th, 1969. He's on the run for a while. Him and the other man had eventually split apart, but a police officer spots him on September 19th, so 8 days later, and tries to pull him over. While the officer is waiting for backup, the man shoots and kills the officer.
Maybe the other police officers will believe now that this guy is not very good.
So they do, because this is happening in the same area. Despite a lot of things, he's very much like centered around like staying in the same area and kind of like homebound in that way. And so these are all officers who've like encountered this situation.
So it seems like the story would stop here.
Right. There is a lot that happens here, but backup is late to arrive. The man is able to flee.
Sounds like another terrible thing in the timeline leading up to, like, what's happening to these girls.
Yeah, so it is actually fascinating. I will add this in that the reason that backup is late to arrive is because the police officers are having a meeting and the person who takes the call for backup didn't want to interrupt the meeting.
Didn't want to interrupt the meeting. Now, this officer is dead and a woman and her child are about to go missing.
Yeah.
It's like that thing we said already, like that one little decision changing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on September 21st, this is the same day that Linda was working her evening shift at the restaurant, the man abducts Karen Maxwell from a cemetery in Pennsylvania. She has gone there to visit her father's grave, but the man takes her in her car, forcing her to drive him around for about 18 hours while threatening to kill her the entire time.
I wonder what is going on in this man's head right now. Like, it's just going to be like the most senselessly destructive person of all time.
Yeah, so he is on this like roller coaster. He is not getting off. He tells Karen that he wants her to drive him to Tennessee, but she also knows enough to tell that that's not where they're going as they're driving around. Finally, they stop and he rapes her. Like Kathy, Karen doesn't think she's going to survive this moment, but instead he actually forces her to get back into his car, and they drive to the Ohio Valley Hospital in St. Clairsville, Ohio.
Is he taking her to the hospital or himself?
I think he was just picking a destination. So they're not going into the hospital. at all. That's the end point.
Okay.
They arrived there at about 7:15 a.m. on September 22nd, and she's let go, and she runs across the road to a police station where she tells them what happened. She says that she thinks that he stole a white car from the hospital parking lot, and he did. It was a white Chevy Impala. Karen thankfully has made it to safety, but the man, he drives on up Route 40 into Maryland, where, low on gas, he stops in LaVale near King's department store at around 11:30 a.m. and sees the GTO sitting in the parking lot, all of it in its 350 horsepower glory, waiting to be taken.
So he's actually drawn to the car first, not Linda and Lori Mae.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is part 3, which I called fate. Like, this is where things connect, where their paths intersect. It's going to get really frustrating right now.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment. When Linda and Lori Mae step out of the car and head into the department store, they don't know that a man is already watching them. Before Linda and Lori Mae come out of the store, a woman, Shirley, parks on the passenger side of Linda's car. Shirley is there with her 3-year-old son and her 16-year-old brother. The brother goes in to buy paint, leaving Shirley and her son Robert to wait in the car. Shirley notices a man looking in her direction, and when Linda and Lori Mae step into the parking lot, she sees the man approach them and watch as they have a conversation on the driver's side of Linda's car. Meanwhile, a married couple, Bob and Belinda, see the same exchange happening, the man talking to the woman. Belinda asks Bob if Linda is a girl he went to school with, but he doesn't even answer her, he just keeps on walking. But Belinda notices this because she thought the man and the woman might have been arguing. But she decides it's not any of her business and goes into the store.
At this point, it kind of does, I don't love that, like, fate with relating to things like this, but it really does seem like everything. There's, like, a million ways in which this could have stopped at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, every time there's somebody or something that could change, it doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah. So Shirley, the woman who's waiting in the car, watches as Linda, Lori Mae, and the man get in the car. Linda gets into the front, and Lori Mae and the man get into the back. This is when Shirley says Linda looks directly at Shirley, and Shirley hears Linda say, "You won't hurt her, will you?"
Another time at which something could have changed.
So close.
Yeah.
Shirley says that she could hear Lori Mae crying in the back seat as they pulled away. 8 miles later, the man has Linda pull into a gas station. He tells her to fill up the car and says if she doesn't do as she's told, he'll kill both her and Lori Mae. She complies and pays for the gas with her own cash. They take Route 40, and along the way, Linda actually passes by her cousin, who sees her, sees people in the car, assumes that she's riding with someone else, and he thinks that she might be going to his house to visit his wife. And so he doesn't do anything either.
Right.
Eventually, Linda, Lori Mae, the man, they pull onto Route 219, and that brings them into Pennsylvania. When she asks him where he plans on going, he tells her Canada and makes her keep driving. He wants her to keep both her hands on the wheel and stay at the speed limit so they don't draw any attention to them. And Linda, she tries to talk to him and she thinks it's safe to. She says if he lets them go, he can take the car, that she won't go to police, that she'll just make it back home to her mom's house. Meanwhile, as Linda, Lori Mae, and the man are driving the GTO through rural Pennsylvania, Shirley, the woman who was in the car next to Linda's, is unsettled by the whole experience that she witnessed. She's not exactly certain what she saw, but she calls her sister-in-law and tells her all about it. And then after that, she calls the police, who do come out to talk to her, but she really doesn't have much to report about the incident, just something that she thinks she saw.
Yeah, it's really a feeling at this point. And she's right, but it's, according to the police, it would probably just be a feeling, right?
Right. And Linda's mom, Edna, she's back home waiting for her daughter and granddaughter to come home. She thought they'd be home soon from shopping, but as the hours pass, she finally calls the police and reports them missing at 8:30 p.m. Late that night, Police check on an abandoned car near the King's department store. They discover that white Impala, the same white Impala that had been stolen from the hospital early that morning by the man. That's when they realize that the man who had raped 2 women, escaped prison, killed a police officer, was in their area. Police knew that the man liked to steal cars, but even with the Impala left behind, there were no cars reported stolen. The only real call that had come in was a mother calling about her daughter and granddaughter being missing. So they decided to wait until morning when surely, as people headed to work and went to their cars, someone would be calling about their car being stolen.
Wait, so we're more concerned about the car being stolen than the woman and her baby missing?
They are not connecting the two at the moment.
Okay. It's always best to wait till morning.
Yeah, so they decided to wait till morning. I think there's some inkling that they could be connected, but...
Okay.
They do end up calling Linda's mom at 6 a.m. and ask if it's possible her daughter could have been at King's the day before. She says it's possible, and this prompts investigators to call up the manager at King's before the store had even opened, and then they call in all the employees from the day before who confirm, like, basically their worst fears, that Linda and Lori Mae had been there the day before. And then when this gets to the news, Shirley's sister-in-law calls her. She said that she'd seen that there was a missing woman and her daughter, and so Shirley calls the police again and starts processing what she had actually witnessed happening. Like, literally feet from her was an abduction.
I can't imagine being Shirley at this moment, though, like, thinking that, like, maybe you thought too slowly on what to do.
Right. Like, processing.
Right.
What is that I'm seeing happening? This is when everyone knows what happened. Linda and Lori Mae have been abducted by a dangerous man. Police across the Northeast and the Midwest get involved, and so do the FBI. And here I'm going to quote directly from Hollick's book about a hope and despair list that they drew up. This is the investigators. Under the despair list side, it was like really full of all the things where they're listing where they think things could go wrong. On the hope side are 2 entries, and here's the quote. Number 1, Linda's menstrual period begins on October 4th. It is hoped Haas will abandon her at that time. 2, Haas's history shows that he has never mistreated his 6 children.
But who's to say that either of those things would be a factor? This guy's obviously, like, completely unhinged at this point.
Right, but also, like...
Why would her period prevent anything? Because he didn't mistreat his own kids, does that mean he won't mistreat someone else's? Like...
this reminds me of the episode we did on Mary Shotwell, where her husband was saying that he didn't think that anyone would take her purse because, like, a man carrying a lady's purse. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what, sir?
It's just, like, men used to be kind of, like, I don't know, and probably still are, like, very intimidated by periods and purses.
And, like, women's paraphernalia.
Yeah.
Linda's husband, Gerald, receives word that while he's out to sea, that he needs to come home, and he does. And days pass and his wife and daughter are not found. And the FBI adds the man to their most wanted list, and still days pass, and Linda and Lori Mae's story is splashed everywhere. It went from a regional manhunt to a national level manhunt. But then a week passes, and then there's no sign of Linda or Lori Mae. And then on October 4th, the day police had hoped the man would let Linda go because of her period, the man was spotted in Waterloo, Iowa at the Maywood Lunch, a cafe where he ordered a T-bone steak. The man had been really cautious throughout this whole week and a half, but 2 things happened that day. First, it was warm. Even though he usually had his gun on him, he left it in the car. Second, though he checked out the street near the Maywood Lunch, he failed to look around the corner and realized that he'd parked near a police station.
Dude's just eating his lunch and making all kinds of mistakes.
Yeah. It's an officer who spots the GTO parked in the lot of the Mayfield. He'd received a bulletin about the car, the man, the missing woman and child, and he'd written down the license plate number in his notebook. And when he checked, the plate numbers match. Through the window of the Mayfield, the officer is able to spot someone inside who looks like the suspect, so he runs back to the station.
To get more people?
Yeah, so he's...
Because, like, you don't want to be that lone officer anymore.
No. Well, yeah, because that didn't turn out so well
right
before. So their 3 officers basically like strip down, get into their plain clothes, and their plan is to go into the cafe and to pretend to be guys who lunch together so that they can get a better view of him and try to ascertain how to get Linda and Lori Mae to safety. Once inside, they notice that though the man is sitting alone at the counter, a woman and a child are sitting nearby in the cafe. So they know they have to move quickly, and when the man gets up to leave, they make their move just as he's exiting. The man is actually quickly arrested, but when officers check on the woman and child inside, they realize that it's not Linda or Lori Mae. They then check the car, hoping they're inside there, but they're not there either. Their last hope is to check the nearby motel where the man had checked in, but Linda and Lori Mae are nowhere to be found.
So, are we ever going to find Linda and Lori Mae in the rest of this story?
Well, that's what part 4 is for.
Okay.
This is the truth about what happened. When FBI agents start questioning the man, they immediately ask where Linda and Lori Mae are, but he says, I don't know them.
Of course he doesn't.
Right. And they really want to push him on this because they want to find Linda and her daughter, so they try a new tactic, which is they want to get him to talk about things that he's willing to talk about. So they start asking him about his escape from the workhouse and his interactions with Karen, the woman who'd been kidnapped from the cemetery. His story is, of course, different than hers. He claims that he'd met Karen the day before and that they'd arranged to meet at the cemetery. He says that she went with him willingly until she decided that she didn't think that he would be taken alive.
I'm just not understanding how somebody who does so much insane stuff is denying all of it. Like, how can you just do all of these things, including shooting an officer, and then just make up all these excuses?
Yeah.
It's just so, like, it doesn't match up with what he's doing. Like, I don't know. It seems like a really wimpy way out of everything to be just like, oh yeah, it's those wild teenagers, or oh yeah, I had a date at the cemetery.
Right. He's very avoidant when it comes to this, like very defensive. Later on, like he really manufactures this whole like image of being a like ladies man. So I think when it comes to like pointing out you raped women, like he gets like,
is it like damaging to his ego to think that like women aren't like sleeping with him voluntarily? He has to rape them?
I think in some ways, yeah, like, so he's crafting this whole image of himself, like, you know, just even bringing up, like, I have a wife, I have a mistress, I have several girlfriends, right? I have 6 children. Like, he's that
like,
guy.
All these dates. Ugh.
So they're doing this questioning, they're getting him talking, but whenever they start to round into the conversation of his encountering Linda and Lori Mae, he resists again and again. It takes them a few tries to get him to talk, but when he finally does, it's because they promise that he'll be able to talk to his mother and his mistress.
His mother and his mistress.
Yes.
We don't care about the wife at this point.
No.
Like, let's just skip to mom and
very
mistress.
Specifically his mistress.
Jeez. Okay.
So while this is happening, though, another team is looking over the GTO. They're hoping to find clues to see where he's been so they have some indication of where to hunt for Linda and Lori Mae. But what they find inside the car is a large amount of blood. First in the front seat and then in the trunk. So even though the man wasn't found with Linda and Lori Mae, there was still this hope that they'd be found alive somewhere. But as soon as investigators saw that blood, I'm guessing all of them realized that this wasn't likely. The truth is that Linda didn't make it past the day that she was kidnapped. When Linda had begged for the man to let her go, he promised them that he would let them out in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is a small town east of Pittsburgh. With this endpoint in mind, Linda just kept driving, but as they approached the town, he told her that there might be roadblocks in the town. That's likely when she realized that he hadn't just kidnapped them, but was on the run for something else. And then he told her to drive around the town, this town that she was hoping was going to be the point where he let them go. At some point, Linda and the man got into a shouting match. She wanted out, and this kind of carried on as she kept driving. At around 5 p.m., just as Linda's mother probably was wondering why they weren't home yet, Linda pulled off Route 219 and came to a stop. She didn't want to go on. Linda and the man argued again, and when Linda refused to drive on, the man grabbed his gun and shot her in the rib cage before shooting her in the head.
So how do we know all of this information?
Through a lot of the testimony later on.
From him?
Yeah.
Okay.
He put Linda's body in the trunk and continued to drive with Lori Mae in the back seat. Linda was in the trunk while he robbed a gas station in Rathmel, stayed at a motel, ate at a restaurant, and then he drove into Ohio with her still in the trunk.
And Lori Mae's still in the back seat?
Lori Mae is still in the back seat, alive. The man is able to use investigators' desire to get information with his desire to get back to Pennsylvania to see his mother and mistress. So he holds on to a lot of details about where he left Linda. But eventually, after he's able to see his mistress, he tells investigators that he left Linda someplace on Route 224 in Ohio, possibly below Akron. He says that there was a motel on his left, and he drove a quarter mile past that before taking a right onto a dirt road. He says that he drove 1.5 miles more where he spotted a cabin, and then drove over a ridge to a dump that had a triangular-shaped steel pipe gate. He says that the gate had a lock on it, but it wasn't secure, so he drove into the dump. He says that he found an area he thought would be filled the next time loads of trash came in to the dump, and he placed her there on the ground, covering her with a broken barrel that had been flattened out. And then he left her there and went and found a motel room for the night. Lori Mae, again, still with him. Lori Mae stayed with him, he says, all throughout his drive until he got to Kansas City, Kansas. Despite being a father, despite there being that hope in the hope and despair list drawn up by investigators, he really didn't know what to do with Lori Mae. He says that, at one stop, some ladies at a restaurant did her hair, but he also said that she didn't like eating certain foods, and I'm really certain she cried often and needed a lot of care, given that she had just turned 2.
She's 2.
Yes. He thinks it is around September 26th when they reached Kansas City, Kansas, and he said he drove down a road called Kansas Road, hoping to talk to a man named Slim about a horse.
That sounds like the beginning of a joke.
Yes. Isn't it part of a song?
Is it?
I think so. And then when he left, he drove about 3 to 4 miles where he came to a 1-lane bridge where a sheriff had to move his car to let him pass.
So he did? The sheriff moved his car and let him pass? With the kidnapped baby and the blood in the car?
Yeah. So he was going to move his car to let him pass, but instead, the man stopped and chatted for a bit with the officer because the man needed some directions, and the sheriff's officer was happy to oblige in giving those directions.
Friendly guy.
Based on the directions he received, the man turned around and drove down the same road he'd come in on, but he was worried the sheriff was going to follow him, so he drove around some, taking different roads here and there. Finally, he saw a creek that ran along the road, so he stopped there. He says he got out of the GTO and watched the water for a while before taking Lori Mae from the back seat. There, along the creek, he held her hand before picking her up and smothering her with a blanket. He said she kicked for a bit before he laid her down on the ground. He left Lori Mae on the side of the creek and covered her body with an empty beer carton. Unsatisfied with this, he fired 9 shots into Lori Mae's body.
Continue.
The man gave a few more clues to where she might be found, which included seeing a highway from when he was driving around that included a sign that read Kansas City, next 3 exits. But despite these clues, the bodies of Linda and Lori Mae have never been found.
It seems so specific, though. Like, how could they not be found? Both seem like he was so specific on where he put Linda's body.
Right.
And then Lori Mae's might be a little harder to find, but doesn't that just seem weird?
Yeah, there's all these hyper-specific details, like the triangular-shaped gate. And then for Lori Mae, there's, like he said, the spot that he pulled off had a lot of, beer cans and cans on the side of the road. It wasn't a dump, but, clearly it sounded like a place that people went. So, but investigators were never able to match up, his descriptions with, anywhere solid and real.
Okay.
In 1970, the man is convicted in the shooting death of the police officer he had killed and resentenced for raping Kathy. He was given the death penalty. It was the last death penalty sentence given in Allegheny County, but eventually the death penalty was reversed and he was sentenced to life in prison. In 1973, The man and 2 other inmates beat and killed a corrections officer. He was convicted of this murder 6 months later. And then 5 years later, in 1978, he was found dead by suicide in his cell. He was never prosecuted for the kidnapping and murders of Linda and Lori Mae. Over the years, investigators and the general public have indeed tried to use the clues the man gave to find Linda and Lori Mae's body. And if his confession is true, it means the mother and daughter are separated by states and their bodies were treated like trash. And though we know they're no longer alive, there's this hope that one day they'll be brought together and returned home.
We've covered a lot of really unpleasant things in this podcast, but this one ranks up there.
Yeah.
As one of the most disturbing. It just seems like there were so many times that it could have been stopped or things could have been different. And I was still they're so concerned about these two being raped or abused, but not thinking about that they're actually going to get murdered and never get to be together again or go home.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the things about this case is that you can see time and time again, moments where everything could have been completely different. That Linda and Lori Mae could still be alive in the world, right? And I think one of the reasons that happens is that this case was so widely publicized. It was a national level case. People at the time recognized him and knew about it, even though people are unlikely to know his name today, which is fine by me and why we're not, saying his name as usual. And I think sometimes if we had this level of information about so many other cases, there would be all those moments where you're like, if just not this one thing.
Right. If one thing along that whole timeline had changed, everything would have been different. But I mean, what happened to Kathy was still unbelievably horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I hope in a way that she didn't forgive her family for the things they said to her, it's not okay the way she was treated either. There's so many people in this whole story that were hurt aside from Linda and Lori Mae.
Yeah. There's Kathy, there's Karen.
Nancy,
right? There's, even
police officers,
there's
corrections
officer, there's Belinda, the woman who briefly saw what she thought was an argument likely between a couple.
Poor Shirley.
Yeah.
She tried to help, but she was just a little too late.
Yeah.
There's so many lives affected in this story. And then what about Gerald?
Yeah, so
he was away and lost his whole family.
Yeah, so while he was at sea, I mean, they had to go and legit fetch him off the boat at sea. And he's there essentially cut off from his family in the first place, and then comes back to chaos. His wife, who it seems like they were just madly in love with one another.
Mm-hmm. It's a sad story.
Yeah.
So what are your hopes with this one? Just that they've retrieved their bodies and are able to lay them to rest together?
Yeah, so it's not always that we tell these stories with an understanding of what happened to the missing person. This is a case where we do know what happened. That's why there's a lot of information about this case. So the best hope here is that at some point they're found, they're identified, and they're both returned. But at the moment, both of their bodies are still missing.
We are now going to listen to Amy's poem, The Golden Hour, read by Liz Moore. Liz Moore is the author of the New York Times bestselling novel Long Bright River, which was a Good Morning America book club pick and one of Barack Obama's favorite books of 2019, as well as the acclaimed novels Heft and The Unseen World. A winner of the 2014-2015 Rome Prize in Literature, she lives in Philadelphia.
Golden Hour. Linda Peogeot, 21, and Lori Mae Peugeot, 2, missing since September 22nd, 1969, from LaVale, Maryland. My daughter tells me about kings, about how, with all his power, Midas reveled in robbing the world of life, transforming it to gold. Sometimes I think about the hours, the sun catching the fine threads of your hair. Your daughter's a mirror you could look into. I know you looked into the rear view, your daughter's face framed as she started to cry, the way you had to have done when you heard the click, that single click of his finger on the hammer. So what else was there to do but drive, pointing the car away from home. The car and the steady thrum of its engine pointed away from everything you knew, while the hills blurred into one long dream. That one long dream you once had about seashells on a beach, the coarse Florida sand slipping through your fingers. You can feel it all slipping through your fingers now, the miles, the air, the small hold you once held on life. And isn't that all of us? Women waiting for it to fall, every step we count carrying us from the everyday into something else. I watch my daughter take those steps, count them to safety, because in my daughter's books, all the kings are really villains.
For more information about our show or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcasts.com. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.